AI companies are repeating the same mistakes that philosophers warned about centuries ago. The philosopher Thomas Hobbes described exactly why AI companies are locked in a death spiral of competition, and almost nobody sees it. By the end of this video, you'll understand this ancient philosophical warning and what effect it's going to have on modern capitalism. I'm Evan Goldstein. I'm a licensed professional engineer and a data scientist, and I'm building the AI Capitalist channel to talk to the leaders and the thinkers, like you, about navigating this new world of intelligent machines.
Today, I want to give a modern take on an ancient philosophical debate about how people compete and cooperate. I'm going to give an updated example from the world of high technology and venture capital to help demonstrate these ancient ideas. My goal with this episode is just to show how it's important to understand the roots of Western philosophy and culture as we move into the world of thinking machines. We need to understand how what may seem like dusty old books actually speak to the universal truths about humanity that continue to be relevant today. You can also see some of the earliest beginnings of the left-right political divide that drives a lot of modern politics in these examples, with a tendency on the left to lean toward the so-called nanny state or welfare state being exemplified by Aristotle, and the tendency of moving forward toward authoritarianism to keep people from consuming each other on the right, represented by Hobbes.
So let me tell you about a story that's been playing out in tech hubs across the world right now. It's a story as old as human civilization itself, but with a modern twist that could shape the future of artificial intelligence. While the technology may be cutting edge, the fundamental challenge that companies face is one that philosophers like Thomas Hobbes recognized centuries ago. The situation I'm about to describe might sound familiar if you're in the AI industry. If you're not, don't worry, the lessons apply to any competitive field where innovation and survival go hand in hand. So two startup founders discover that they're developing nearly identical AI models for the same untapped market. They notice each other's patent applications filed on the same day, and their algorithms are approaching the same problem, but from slightly different angles. Each knows what's at stake. The window for securing Series A funding is closing fast, and they need investor backing to survive the quarter. Both teams have brilliant engineers, but limited computing resources, and are rapidly depleting their seed money. Combining their research could accelerate their development exponentially. But collaboration means exposing proprietary code to a potential rival who might decide that the entire market opportunity is worth more than partnership, potentially sealing not just the innovation, but also the engineering talent and the investor connections. And so now we have a dilemma. Team up or go solo? Thomas Hobbes, who was writing during the chaotic times of the English Civil War, offers us some interesting insights in his famous book, Life. He starts things off by picturing what life might be like in what he calls the state of nature, a scenario without any government or laws or guiding authority. Basically, humanity in pre-modern, really prehistoric times. The times our physiology and our psychology were designed to operate in. Recognizing that all humans possess equal skills and determination, as Thomas Hobbes states, nature hath made men so equal in faculties of body and mind, it becomes clear that no individual can legitimately assert actual authority over another. This fundamental equality lays the groundwork for inevitable conflict when two parties desire the same resource, with both equally equipped to compete for it. In essence, our shared capabilities demand a reevaluation of how we approach resource allocation, conflict resolution in our societies. Because venture capital attention is finite, satisfying every startup's funding needs becomes impossible, and it creates a zero-sum game where every major investment secured by one company means other innovators will likely fail. The founder's success becomes another's downfall. And this sets off a cycle of motivation, largely because Hobbes talks about something he calls felicity, which he defines as a continuous progress. It seems that as human beings, it's our nature to always be on the quest for more. Even when our basic needs are met, there's this natural urge to chase after more wealth, more comfort, recognition, and that keeps us moving forward. It's interesting to consider how our desires aren't just shaped by our own whims, but also by outside influences. For example, a market application that seems mundane might suddenly appear revolutionary the moment your competitor starts developing it. Hobbes brings up an interesting point when he observes that if two men desire the same thing, they might view each other as rivals. This natural competition can take a turn, leading them to endeavor to destroy or subdue one another. What's intriguing is that this spark of rivalry doesn't just stay between two people. It can spread throughout the entire community, resulting in what he calls a war of all against all. In contrast to our modern world, where differences in status, wealth, and power often prevent direct clashes. The state of nature offers a level playing field. Everyone has equal claims to resources, and as Hobbes notes, for as long as every man holdeth his rights to all things, doing anything he liketh, so long are all men in the condition of war. In this unfiltered environment, there aren't any kings or subjects. Instead, everyone sees each other as both a source of inspiration, the challenger for the same essentials, such as safety and recognition. And this creates a captivating mix of rivalry and admiration that's all wrapped into one. As time goes on, we often find ourselves shifting our focus from what we truly desire to the people we perceive as obstacles in our way. We might develop feelings of resentment, similar to what Nietzsche described, and start to view others as the main reason for our struggles. In these situations, it can feel like every person has a right to everything, including each other's belongings, as Hobbes pointed out. When we step outside our comfort zone, we can encounter risks like theft or violence from those we see as enemies, leading us to believe that our rights to our possessions and even our safety are only as strong as our ability to defend them. Now, one could reasonably ask, is it possible for two AI startups to collaborate in such a competitive funding environment? Well, yes, absolutely. Cooperation can certainly happen, especially if we think of it as coming together with others who are facing the same dangers. This approach can feel a bit mechanical, almost like a practical reaction to fear and turmoil. But it's worth pondering whether this kind of connection can lead to something greater than just overcoming a rival. Aristotle, the ancient Greek philosopher who was actually Alexander the Great's teacher, might see this situation differently. He believes that human communities naturally evolve into increasingly complex and beneficial forms of cooperation. In his view, partnerships start small, like a family working together under one roof, what he called oikos in ancient Greek. These family units then naturally grow into larger village communities, which are terms common, where multiple families support each other. Eventually, all these villages can develop into what Aristotle saw as the perfect form of human community, a self-governing city-state, polis. Each level builds on the one before it, creating stronger bonds and better ways to help everyone thrive. Now, looking at our AI startups through this lens, their initial partnership could just be the first step toward building a larger, more cooperative tech community that benefits everyone involved. For Hobbes, though, fostering that richer cooperation to achieve a shared good can be very difficult without a higher sovereign in place, someone with the authority to impose rules and keep conflicts in check. To understand why, let's examine our two founders who discover a breakthrough application. The innovation valuable enough to transform both of their companies. To capitalize on it, one team has developed the core algorithm, while the other built the implementation framework. Success hinges entirely on mutual trust and commitment. If either team defects, the innovator fails, leaving the remaining company with worthless partial code. Meanwhile, smaller market opportunities emerge. Each startup could pursue these independently, guaranteeing modest returns but nothing groundbreaking. In an ecosystem defined by competition and mistrust, the safer choice is to abandon the breakthrough and focus on incremental innovations. The transformative opportunity vanishes. The small wins are secured and both companies survive another quarter. The competitive pressure intensifies as each founder has to choose between making a preemptive move to protect their intellectual property or maintaining transparency in hopes that the others will reciprocate. At first glance, the mutual restraint seems rational. It's going to mitigate the unnecessary conflict and conserve resources, and it allows for a peaceful coexistence. However, as you might expect, the same dilemma reemerges. Even if someone means well, the mere chance of another person striking first can lead to a defensive response. As Hobbes points out, from this diffidence of one another, there is no way for any man to secure himself so reasonable as anticipation. If someone does attack, being the first to respond can help lessen your losses. On the flip side, if the other person chooses not to attack, striking first can help you assert yourself and ensure your safety in the future. It turns out that no matter what choice the other makes, both individuals often end up deciding attacking is the best strategy. This unfortunate situation creates a cycle where what seems rational for each person on their own leads to a collective disaster when everyone acts at the same time. In the end, everyone ends up worse off, resources are wasted, and life can become solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Think about a market crash, where if everyone were to hold back from selling off their shares, stock market, a particular company, that company's crash, it might be survivable. However, everyone is in a hurry to be the first to avoid being damaged. and therefore everybody leaps in to the crash, to the sell-off, and it can kill a company, kill a market, and kill a country's economy. So look at how social media companies compete for our attention. Companies like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube are locked in an endless battle to make their algorithms more addictive and their content more engaging. Each platform claims that they're just trying to give users a better experience, but their competitors, each new feature is a threat to their user base. This has created a race to the bottom where platforms constantly push more extreme content, addictive features, potentially perturbing mental health and spreading misinformation just to keep users strong. To prevent this kind of destructive competition, Hobbes suggests that we need to give up some of our freedom to act however we want and to accept the authority of a powerful governing force. What he calls the Leviathan can create and enforce rules for everyone's benefit. Today's digital era, organizations like the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, and content moderation boards, social media watchdog groups act as these digital peacekeepers, setting guidelines for acceptable practices, protecting user privacy, making sure that companies don't put profits ahead of public good. Hobbes famously notes that covenants without the sword are but words, and have no strength to secure a man at all. This means that we need a bit of firmness to ensure that aggressive actions aren't worth pursuing, effectively turning the competition into a more collaborative environment. When we create this kind of situation, it allows individuals to chase their dreams, whether they involve trade or innovation, all while resting easy at night. Ultimately, we see that Hobbesian cooperation relies on mutual agreements based on a shared understanding of vulnerabilities and of the need for self-preservation. He doesn't believe that being social is an innate quality in humans, which is likely why he aligns more with Aristotle in their intellectual debates.
It is true that certain living creatures, as bees and ants, live sociably with another, which are therefore by Aristotle numbered amongst the political creatures, and have no other direction than their particular judgments and appetites, nor speech whereby one of them can signify to another what he thinks expedient for the common benefit. And therefore, some man may perhaps desire to know why mankind cannot do the same.
Now, it's a bit unfair to analyze Aristotle's idea of the zoon political animal solely through Hobbes' lens. Right at the beginning of Politics, Aristotle shares his insights.
We see that every city-state is a community of some sort, and that every community is established for the sake of some good, for everyone performs every action for the sake of what he takes to be good.
In this passage, he uses the word we to show that there's a shared understanding of how important this community is. He reflects his view that everything in nature has its own purpose and its goal that guides it for its true essence. For instance, the household, oikos, is essential for fulfilling everyday needs, food, shelter, and family. When we think about how villages build on households to protect one another and to facilitate trade, it's easy to see why a larger community is also necessary. Aristotle suggests this ultimate community promotes the highest good for everyone, which isn't just about surviving, but about achieving eudaimonia, thriving by developing virtue. We commonly refer to this community as the city-state, as he calls it, the polis. Some points out that the city-state exists not just to allow us to live, but to enable us to live well. Since we can't thrive in isolation, it's clear that our path to a good life involves being part of communities. For Aristotle, humans aren't just flawed beings burdened by sins or ruthless individuals living alone in the so-called state of nature. Instead, he sees us as social beings whose identities are deeply rooted in our connections and our communities. Working together comes naturally to us, driven by our sociable nature, our shared purpose to achieve something greater than ourselves. Aristotle notes that justice in the polis is concerned with common advantage. While collaboration is essential, it doesn't always lead to a virtuous and fulfilling life. Although we have a tendency to collaborate, sometimes we can do so in harmful ways that steer us toward less noble goals. As Aristotle points out, some things are distinguished right from birth, some suited to rule and others suited to being. This means that people have different natural inclinations. Some are more apt to lead and work toward common good. Additionally, not everyone is equally virtuous or able to contribute to the polis. There are those who might prefer a more basic existence, as Aristotle suggests when he mentions people who are quite slavish in their tastes, preferring a life suitable to beasts. Imagine a vibrant city-state where everyone is engaged in community life, all working together to reach a joyful sense of well-being. Eudaimonia. Think about a busy tech city where companies have decided to work together on something important, creating rules for making their systems fair and safe forever. It's like writing out rule books that all AI companies use to make sure their technology treats people equally and doesn't cause harm. Big tech companies are offering their powerful computers to help. Researchers are sharing their knowledge, and smaller companies are testing the rules to make sure they work. Meanwhile, our two AI startups are watching from the sidelines. They're thinking, hey, if everyone else does the hard work of figuring out these rules, we can just copy them later. Nobody's going to notice if we don't help out. We're just two small companies in this huge project. What happens if lots of companies start thinking this way? It means it would end up missing important pieces. Some AI systems might end up being unfair to certain groups of people or make mistakes that can hurt society. This is what experts call the free rider problem. When people or companies try to get the benefits of something without helping to create it. It's like wanting to use a community garden but never helping to plant or water the vegetables. You just go there to pick the fruits when it's all done. Where individuals shirk their responsibility in the hope of reaping the benefits without bearing the costs. To ensure that most people exercise their civic responsibilities, Aristotle proposes several principles. Aristotle's principles of antipiponthos, what we would call reciprocity, is all about making sure that contributions are rewarded fairly. As Aristotle beautifully notes, if the persons are not equal, the things are not equal either. But in all transactions, the ratio must be the same, as one person receives is proportional to what the other gives, and this forms a bond of community. For example, a software developer who creates an open source tool that helps other startups process data more efficiently might receive early access to advanced computing resources from the companies benefiting from their code. This encourages more developers to share their innovations, knowing that their contributions will be recognized and rewarded. It creates a positive feedback loop where more tech professionals contribute to the community, resulting in a thriving ecosystem that lifts everyone up. We can observe this dynamic in today's governance too. For example, consider progressive taxation. It helps people contribute to community resources in a way that aligns with their needs. At the same time, robust public services make sure that everyone can access vital areas like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Now, this thoughtful equilibrium between what individuals contribute and what they receive fosters a strong sense of trust in the system, encouraging productivity and promoting the common. Plus, Aristotle highlights the significance of corrective justice in maintaining fairness, particularly when issues of harm and inequity would rise in our social interactions.
The corrective just must be the mean between loss and the gain. And this is the reason why, upon a dispute arising, men have recourse to the judge. Going to the judge is in fact going to the just. The suffering and the doing are divided into unequal shares. Well, the judge tries to restore equality by penalty, thereby taking from the gain.
When a merchant sells faulty products to a customer, it's only fair that they step up to make things right, whether that means giving back the money or swapping the goods for something better. This idea links nicely to consumer protection laws that we see in action today, fostering trustful communities. Both concepts highlight the importance of trust as a foundation for long-lasting cooperation. Large projects like building roads or ensuring justice rely on the belief that everyone will do their part. If trust is lacking, people might just shift their focus to smaller self-centered goals that benefit themselves rather than the community. As Hobbes warned, without trust, society could break down, leading to a world devoid of knowledge, arts, and basic social interaction. When we look at Aristotle and Hobbes, we see two very different perspectives on cooperation that reflect their unique views on human nature and social goals. Aristotle believed that people are naturally good and capable of balancing personal interests with the group. According to him, community is the nurturing ground where individuals can flourish, promoting common good and upholding values like justice and reciprocity. On the flip side, Hobbes viewed humans as primarily focused on self-interest and survival. He argued that true cooperation arises from the understanding that a strong authority figure is necessary to ensure safety and order through a social contract. Hobbes assumed that people tend to act in ways that undermine collective efforts without some form of external enforcement. I think we can see a lot of similarities between this Aristotle versus Hobbes approach to human nature and the left and right sides of the political forces competing for dominance today. The left taking Aristotle's communitarian approach and the right far more focused on Hobbes' more skeptical approach to human nature. We can see this also in the political cycle, where about every 84 years, there's a turning where we go from cooperative society to an unraveling period, which is what we're in right now. And we see a very Hobbesian effect. shutting down bureaucracy under the assumption that we're all competing and fighting for resources. AI often mirrors the human nature of the human beings who produce the data it's trained on. We see this tension between individual advantage and collective benefit. It also directly mirrors one of the most pressing challenges in artificial intelligence today, which is alignment. Just as Hobbes worried about individuals pursuing self-interest in society's interests, modern AI researchers grapple with ensuring that powerful AI systems remain aligned with humanity's broader interests, rather than optimizing for narrow objectives that could harm society. Consider an AI company racing to develop an advanced large language model. The fastest path to market might involve training the system to maximize engagement or performance on specific benchmarks. But this approach can produce an AI that excels at its assigned task, failing to account for broader societal impacts. You can see my video where I review how this is definitely a major problem with reinforcement learning. If you look at Aristotle's vision of a community working toward the common good, and then offers valuable insights for AI learning. Just as he argued that true flourishing requires balancing individual and collective interests, modern AI development demands careful consideration how these systems can serve not just their immediate users or creators, but humanity as